Hi everyone, and welcome. You're here today with Andy Valkyrie Divine, and today we're going to kick it off with the Sacral Chakra. So part of our chakra energy series is that we've gone through the Root Chakra, we spent 3 days on it, and now we're moving on to the Sacral Chakra. The Sacral Chakra sometimes is also called the Navel Chakra or the Belly Chakra, for the obvious reason that it's located right at the belly, at the lower part, sort of just under the belly button. And it's a very, very powerful center for a number of reasons. So I'll get started. I'm just going to show you first the mandalas, just like I did last time when it came to the Root Chakra, because they're just so beautiful. And I just wanted to share this with you. So that is one of them, and you can always meditate on these mandalas. You can find them online. They're so easy to find, and they're just absolutely gorgeous, and you can print it and just use it to meditate. This one's a little bit in tones of red, orange, and yellow, which are the first 3 chakras. Hope you can see that 1 second. Sorry guys. There we go. And so that's another one that you can have. I'm going to scan them like usual and put them on my blog so you can have them if you'd like to meditate with them. You can even print them out if you'd like. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they just radiate the color. And remember, I said that chakras are all about the color that we associate with them. And so as you can tell, the color for today is orange. I don't have any orange clothes or anything like that, but I was able to find a scarf which has orange colors, and my lipstick. So that's about it for orange. So if you see me wearing the same thing 3 days in a row, it's because we're spending 3 days on this chakra, and this is the only orange thing that I own. So we'll get started. Now, I have a lot of things to say about the Sacral Chakra because it is so rich in information. So I hope that I'll be able to get through all of it without spending 35 minutes like last time. So the Sacral Chakra is a lot about, if we have to brainstorm sort of the themes of it, we're talking about change. We're talking about movement, about duality, about sensuality, about sexuality, about what else? Intimacy. We're talking about socializing, boundaries, pleasure, emotions. So if I tell you that, you kind of start to get an idea, okay, emotions play a big role, duality, what does that mean? We're not really sure. Sexuality, ooh, I like the sound of that. So there's all kinds of little cues that are starting to get you thinking about, what is the Sacral Chakra all about? And like I said, the placement of it is just underneath the belly button, kind of like where your sacrum is, so just not quite the beginning of the back of the spine, because that's the root, but just a little bit higher up. You have the sacral vertebrae in your spine. And so you can find it right there. It's that portion of space, and it concerns also the genitals, the hips, and the lower back. So again, we're talking about the lower back, just a little bit under the belly button. The Sanskrit word for it, it's a hard one. It's called Svadhisthana. And it actually means sweetness. And so when we think of pleasure, when we think of sexuality, sensuality, emotions, and again, we're looking at it today from the point of view that the chakra is balanced, right? There's no disharmony in it. Everything is absolutely balanced, and as it should be. And so if you're experiencing life as you go through it from a point of view of pleasure, of things being good, there's that sweetness to life, right? It's juicy, it's sweet, it's pleasurable, and this is what the Sacral Chakra at its best is all about. Now, at the root, we were talking about that when we refer to the root, we talk about the right to have or the right to be here. And when we discuss the Sacral Chakra, we're talking about the right to feel, right? So this is our seat of emotions. And so the right to feel becomes very, very important when it comes to this chakra. And this is where we experience that huge range of emotions, right? So because it's the seat of emotions, we experience emotions that range from the negative to the positive. again, if we're staying in line with the fact that the chakra is balanced, which is what we discussed in the beginning, so this is just the foundational introduction of it, then it makes sense that we're talking about pleasure, we're talking about, you know, that joy, intimacy, feeling of belonging, all those kinds of feelings are all intertwined in this center. Now, if you think of it from the point of view of an energetic flow, remember we were talking about how it's a two-way street, and I'll address this in a little bit, just maybe in 5 minutes. And so what ends up happening is, you know, we start with the root, which was what we've worked through for the last 3 days, and what happens is we establish our ground and our center in our root, and then, you know, once we have that, then we're ready to build upwards, right? So again, we need to have that foundation in order to move up. And so what ends up happening is, at the level of the sacral chakra, we end up taking our attention from ourself, which is, you know, that idea of, you know, my right to be here, my right to have. Those are all things that come from you, right? So you're always focused on the self, on myself, so that you can survive, you can ensure your basic needs and so on. At the level of the sacral chakra, the attention kind of moves to what's out there, right? So you're moving from that sense of me and myself and I, and you're looking out to something else that is out there, right? And that's where you're shifting from the self to others, and so you're starting to think of duality, right? So I was trying to brainstorm with you a little bit on that and say, what does that mean, duality? I kind of had the same reaction, you know, originally when I heard about this concept, and I was like, okay, but it makes a lot of sense, right? So you're moving from you to that other side, right? So you're starting to explore relationships, which is something that you know, puts you in contact with others. So again, it has to do with socializing, it has to do with attraction. This is where that sensuality, that sexuality aspect starts to come in, because you are being pulled, really, it's a force of attraction that starts to come into play here. And you're no longer looking at you, but you're also looking at other people, right? You're starting to open your perspective to what's out there as opposed to what's in here. So that's where you have, you know, attractions, feelings, desire, all those aspects of emotion are entwined in here. And we tend to associate the sacral chakra with the element of water. And that might, I hope, come to no surprise to you, because we tend to associate emotions with water all the time, right? And so we think of our emotions kind of like a wave that just comes through and takes us over, you know. And in many ways, I think if you think solely on, you know, from a pleasure perspective, it's also like that, you know, it's just a wave that comes. We think of, for example, pain. When we think of tears, you know, it's water, right? So again, we tend to associate these things together, and so it comes to no surprise that the element for the sacral chakra has to do with water, because it's fluidity, it's movement. You know, you're going from that grounded firmness of the root and moving upwards to a more fluid-like kind of state. So again, the element would be, the association is that of water. And think about it too, that, you know, while we're talking about our body, and our body is definitely solid, which inherently comes from the root chakra, but our body is made of 70 to 80% water, right? Our blood, everything, our organs, I mean, at their very cellular level, it's liquid. And so yes, you need that container from the root chakra to give you that solidity and to keep you firm and in place and strong and solid, and to you know, to have that vessel to hold everything in. But on the inside, there's this certain fluidity of water that comes through. And also at the level of emotions. Emotions are also very fluid, very watery, very flowy, right? We tend to have mood swings, and our emotions change all the time depending on what happens to us and what circumstances we encounter throughout the day. So again, putting it all together makes a lot of sense, at least from my perspective. I don't know, you tell me yours. And let's see, what else can I mention? Okay, I'm going to read a little bit about duality because I think it's very, very interesting. I have a page here that I numbered. So, again, the book that I'm using, it's right over here, and it's called The Sevenfold Journey. I would definitely suggest it if you want to go step by step, work with the chakras. It's absolutely the best book that I have found so far. It's a little old, but definitely full of information. Okay, so duality and polarity. It says, the second chakra brings us from singleness to duality. With duality comes an expansion of the picture and the presentation of choice. Suddenly, there is me and you, and this and that, us and them. We make our choices by sorting out our feelings and desires. This work is a prerequisite to enacting the will, which is the work of the third chakra. So in order to be able to actually have that willpower and to take action towards certain things, you need to make up your mind first about, you know, what's that decision? What am I going to do about it, right? And that comes from making a choice between this and this and this and this. So again, it's that aspect of the choice comes in, you know, there's change, something happens, and you have decisions to make, and we tend to base all our decisions, you know, on how we feel about certain things, and we definitely go through our emotions every day when we make, you know, all kinds of decisions, from, you know, what do I want to eat today, to, you know, very life-changing, big, large decisions, you know, career choices, etc., partners, all these kinds of things. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Now, we said that the Sacral Chakra talks about emotions, right? And there's this guy, John Bradshaw, if you guys have heard of him, and if you might not have heard of him, you might have heard his quote or his saying, which he says that emotion means energy in motion. And again, I want to emphasize that the sacral chakra is all about fluidity, it's all about movement, it's all about going from that you know, very stable, grounded place, moving up into a place that is more fluid, more, you know, there's a lot more movement going on. And so that's kind of where you get that that idea of expansion. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive because you're wondering, movement, expansion, what do you mean? And I'll walk you through it. I also kind of had to think about this for a second in terms of, you know, what do you mean by expanding? And what ends up happening is that you expand by looking outwards. Right, so you're experiencing that feeling of attraction towards something else, you know, and when we think of partnership, when we think of who do we want to be with, and you know, ideally spend the rest of our lives with, in terms of romantic partners, you know, we're actually talking about I'm being pulled towards someone else, and there's a movement that goes from me towards that person to enact, you know, my choice, and this is the choice that I'm willing to make based on my feelings and my emotions towards that person. And that movement towards something or towards that other person, which is the duality that we're talking about, leads you to move upwards. Now, also, you know, hand in hand with this, what ends up happening is, as a result of these choices, sometimes we experience pain, and sometimes we experience pleasure. And so when we experience pain, what ends up happening is right away we tend to withdraw, right? And so from that kind of fluid and whatever state, you tend to go back to that firmness and like, I didn't like that, right? So you tend to pull back. It's a withdrawal, it's an avoidance. It's that defense mechanism that comes through right away, and you'll go back to that lower center of this is threatening my survival. I don't like that. This feels off, right? So that's a way that you can go backwards into contraction. And that's what happens when you're in pain. You withdraw, you surrender, you feel depressed. You're absolutely contracting your energy, yourself, into something smaller than whatever was. You know, whereas when you experience the other spectrum, if you're talking about pleasure, you're talking about relaxing, you know, letting go and just kind of, you know, going with the flow and feeling the enjoyment. And the exact opposite happens. And when you feel these kinds of feelings, you tend to expand, right? And we always tend to think that, you know, oh, that person completes me, or that person is, you know, takes me to that other level, or, you know, we're always thinking of like that level higher, you know, experiencing, or the experience of pleasure, maybe not necessarily the person, but the feelings that someone can arise in you allow you to feel that kind of expansiveness. Which, you know, by the same token, if you break up with someone and you're feeling those feelings of pain and rejection and, you know, depression, you tend to withdraw. So that's another aspect of the sacral chakra here. Let me see if I missed anything. Oh, yes, of course I missed something. Okay, so the next level. So we're talking about, you know, movement. We moved into emotions, and that, you know, through emotions you have that willpower to move on to the next level. So as you see, there's either a movement going up in the chakras of expansiveness, or there's a movement going down through the chakras when you're experiencing pain or you know, imbalance in this center. And the next thing that I would talk about is, if you take it to the next level, is, you know, we talked about intimacy, about sensuality, and about sexuality, given that we're talking about all these feelings of pleasure. And so, you know, when you talk about pleasure, when you talk about emotions, automatically you start thinking, okay, sensuality, sexuality. And again, we're referring to that expression of the duality of yourself and that something else or someone else, as merging as one. Again, in a state of expansiveness, that is what happens. And again, I have a little passage that I want to read to you guys because I thought it was absolutely good. Okay, so it says, energy in motion creates expansion and change. Moving upward in the chakra system is an act of expansion from a condensed state of solid matter to a vastness of consciousness. When we feel a pull towards other, when we feel that tug of desire, of yearning, of emotion, then we are moved to initiate something, to make a change, to expand ourselves in some way. Now in terms of sexuality, we're moving on, and it says here, so again, that expression of opposites merging as one. And sexuality is the experience of that attraction, the movement, the feeling, desire, and connection, all rolled into a joyous experience of pleasure. The sweetness of pleasure is the jewel in the lotus of the second chakra. Tomorrow, is it tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow I will show you some of the symbology behind the sacral chakra, and you'll see that there's that juiciness, the jewel, the sweetness of the pleasure that they're talking about in the symbology. So stay tuned, guys. And again, it just refers back to this idea that svadhisthana, which is the Sanskrit term, represents that sweetness, that juiciness, that pleasure aspect of you know, of when you're in an altered state. You're literally in an altered state of consciousness, right? You're expanding and you're feeling good, whether it's related to sexuality or not. Like, it can just be your positive emotions, right? Typically when you're positive, you're bubbly, you're expansive in your state of mind and being. So that's what it relates to. So that's it for me for today. Tomorrow we're going to discuss what happens when the sacral chakra is experiencing blockages or it's out of balance. It's a juicy topic. So stay tuned, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and I hope you enjoyed today. Bless you.